Well, hello everyone. It's RPG with DBJ. I'm just as surprised as you guys. This week, despite having um, visiting relatives in town, I still am able to produce the show live Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is really surprising to me. Um, so, thank you very much if you still decided to join me at this time. Otherwise, um, yeah, I'm sure I really threw some people off who were like, "Oh, I can't believe I missed it." Okay, so today's Monster Monday, and of course, we always talk about some subjects. So the title of this is "Good Going Bad." Um, I've seen this subject brought up a number of times. Excuse me, and this particular subject is just going to be about um, how to use or some ideas on using good monsters, creatures, people who have, uh, I suppose, would be lawful and yeah, Vince. Yeah, I'm surprised myself too. I kind of, uh, I didn't set my alarm, so I thought I'd be up like normally. I get up about 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour before I could get online, and I woke up about I don't know, maybe like 8 minutes ago. Yeah, really bizarre. Anyway, dedicated. So using good creatures, good monsters, people with good motivations in your role playing games without trying to go through the um, typical tropes. Okay, so of course, we're going to start out with some of the typical tropes you can use, really basic things, because oftentimes um, in role playing games, like Vincent is saying, the thing is, there are not that many good creatures. Most of them are evil or neutral. It's much easier using them and killing and then killing them. But well, I don't want to say I disagree. I want to say that this is weird to say, but they do waste some page count on good creatures, and in some ways, it's like, well, why did they bother putting them in there if you're not going to be able to use them, right? Even if they take 10% of a 100-page book, that's 10 pages that they used art, printing, writing, and then didn't use them. Um, yeah, Tessa says, yeah, killing them and taking their stuff. Yeah, but I think sometimes we tend to. I mean, either they become allies, or they become like the quest giver, the fetch quest giver. Hey, I'm a good, and then fill in the blank, angel, or what I think it's storm giants are supposed to be good, and what's the coatl? I think is the winged snake that's supposed to be good. I think Jin, not the Ifrit, but the Jin are good, and a lot of them give the fetch quests, but making them adversaries in the game is really can seem like it's very difficult. Vince says, I personally like to do it the other way around. Making some evil monsters good is just such an interesting ally, potential enemy. Yeah, the coatl, I believe. Of course, I'm butchering it. Um, and yeah, disrupting the expectations of, say, something that's expected to be evil, like a dragon or some kind of uh, goblinoid, humanoid folk, or even ghosts and spirits and undead that are not supposed to be evil, and making them good, or at least not adversarial, can throw people off. But unfortunately, when you do that, you're going to have to accept the fact that the first meeting or the second meeting or even the third meeting, the PCs are just going to go in and slaughter them until they realize that they did the wrong thing. Uh, I mean, that's kind of especially if they look evil. That was the kind of the concept of a 90s cartoon gargoyles, where the main characters, the good guys looked evil because they were, well, gargoyles sitting on the side of a building, looking monstrous with, leather wings and, I don't know, claws and sharp teeth, but they're basically the good guys. Most good creatures I can think about are unicorns, celestial animals, angels. Yeah, a lot of them are. And uh, uh, Dungeons and Dragons, all of the metallic dragons, uh, gold, silver, copper, brass. Yeah, those guys are good as well. Yeah, the metallic dragons. Yeah, the sometimes some of them. Oh, there's also Sphinx. There's a version of a Sphinx that are good. There's version of the Naga that are good. Um, and again, they become fetch quest creatures. Like, hey, I'm the good dragon. I need you to help me defeat the evil dragon. Or, hey, I'm the good giant. I need you to help me defeat the evil giants or something. And sometimes that can seem a little bit odd because it's like, well, yeah, blink dogs, centaurs. Um, I just searched the SRD. Yeah, blink dogs, centaurs. There's some others out there. There's not very many, and even if you look at the meta portion of it, is it cloud giant? I thought it was storm giant. It's cloud giants. Um, Even if you look at the meta version of it, not only are there not that many good creatures, um, they're not very, hmm, excuse me, they're not very cohesive, meaning like you have fiends, right? Demons, devils, and there's lists of them. You have giants and there's lists of them. But when it comes to giants, or I think the most cohesive versions would be the dragons, and even the metallic dragons aren't like they don't roll thick, right? They're not a gang. There aren't too many good creatures that are gangs up. Maybe blink dogs would be the closest to a gang of good creatures. Most of them are tend to be solitary, um, no more than a handful, no more than like five. You may have some that breed fae. There's some good fae, yeah, but in general, not very many. And but you're missing like you put a list of them. You're like, well, there's 20 of them, 30 of them. Then you start talking about other books. So how can we use them? Okay, so the first method is pretty simple, and you just wipe off the good alignment and you just make them evil, right? Uh, it's yeah, that's basically it. Chat doesn't like me spamming. Yeah, yeah. So for example, you basically take you take the bare bones and you reskin it, right? So then you can take like let's take a silver dragon, and instead of calling it a silver dragon, you call it like a chrome dragon or like an iron dragon or something like that. Like you could just reskin the alignment, make it evil, use the same abilities because you like the abilities of whatever the good creature is, and you're done. So centaurs, you can just say, well, these particular centaurs are evil, and just change the alignment. So that's one method, and that's really basically it, right? Like even a pseudo dragon that's good, you can just, you know, basically Tesla's like, try commas. Yeah, good advice and also being sarcastic as well. I get it. But yeah, you could take a pseudo dragon and make it, I don't know, a tiny red dragon or something, or make it black and oily or whatever. You can do those things. So you can reskin the way it looks, reskin the alignment, and you're done. Personally, to me, that's the easiest way. And some of those creatures, even except for maybe the Pegasus unicorn, um, and some of the metallic dragons, most PCs aren't even going to expect it to be good, whether they're good or not. Um, yeah, the Book of Vile Darkness had a way to change a good creature evil, and a book of exalted deeds. I remember that one. Turning evil creatures into good ones, and it happened through magic, torture, or imprisonment. So that's actually that's flowing into my second one. Is that a good creature could become evil just due to being cursed, injured, tortured, um, vile circumstances. So it's not that they want to be evil; it is that they have undergone some kind of corruption or something like that. And in a way, that could be a fetch quest. So maybe the silver dragon is like this blackened metal or something, and it's I guess you could call it like a ebony steel dragon or something, and it maybe it was there's a spike in its heart, a big red spike in its heart, and you have to remove it, or it's torturing the land, and there's a way to remove the curse, but no mortal being could remove it. So you have to, maybe the great spellcaster in the player characters group has to go and learn this remove curse spell before it's too late, or find an ancient object, like say one of the dragon orbs or something, to remove it. So in essence, it could be the good creature could be a hazard or obstacle, and they have to fight the creature not to kill it, but to change it back to what it was. Yeah, Vince says in D&D, being good is more than changing your opinion. It's actually part of your being. I think even a connection to a good plane or something is fundamentally you. Yes, because Dungeons and Dragons actually has like the cosmic. There is it is reality in that world that there is a cosmic fight between good and evil, law and chaos. Humans are not good by default D&D, but these creatures are. There should be some effort involved in changing them evil, and it could be that there's something far more, far more powerful or insidious that turn them evil. For example, one good example is that they decided these good creatures may have taken evil on in their home turf and were corrupted by it. There's the idea of fallen angels, the angels that have been in battle for so long that they've become disillusioned, or were, the solars or planars were, the diva were assaulted so and overcome so much that the fiends decided to turn them onto themselves, or even the fiends. What's the way? How do I describe this? That the fight against evil was planned so that it would eventually make them fall. So it's almost like a game of cat and mouse, where they keep leading the angels down a deeper and darker and a more insidious path until their wings turn black and that kind of thing. It could be that the what's the movie? Constantine. In the movie Constantine, there's sorry, spoilers. Keanu Reeves is trying to solve the thing with these ancient mystical powers, and bringing back evil and such. And in it, there's an angel, and the angel is convinced that if the world is plunged into darkness, people will come to the light. So there is this idea that goodness and law and justice and honor can be manipulated into convincing itself that it is doing the right thing, but for insidiously evil methods. And this is one other method for using good, turning good evil, is that it's a manipulation of their purpose, their intent, their goal. I once brought up the example of two knights protecting a countryside. One knight needs to protect 50,000 people that live in a major city. The other knight wants to protect 100 people in a village on the border of the country, and they both know a horde of goblinoids are coming. One knight says, hey, we have 100 villagers living on the border of our country. I need to take a contingent of knights to protect them. And then the other knight says, we can't afford to send a contingent away. We need to protect our land. Those 100 villagers were given the opportunity to come in our borders and our walls of our castle. They decided not to, leave them. We need to protect our main country. We can't have a weak link. And both of them could be very just. They could be very lawful. They're doing the right thing, even though they both agree to disagree. Vince says, I once had an RPG angel who was forced to guard something for years and years, and he was so fed up with it that he did not want to be good anymore. He did just give the PCs what they wanted and later became an ally. It was more or less an evil campaign. And there are things where, exhaustion, being disillusioned, the changing of the guard. So, a good angel may be serving another master. It could be a change in the war. So if, maybe the good angel feels like they're left out of the fight and want to change things. Like the movie Constantine, where the angel's like, forget this cat and mouse thing. If we just plunge society into darkness, people will fall to our side. They will fall to goodness because they will be at their lowest point. Isolation is pretty traumatizing. Solitary confinement is basically a torture. More true than a little bit. Solitary confinement. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and there is a prison that exists till this day. It was featured in a number of movies, most notably Law Abiding Citizen with Jamie Foxx and Gerard Butler. Anyway, I was about to say Thomas Jefferson. Benjamin Franklin designed what he thought would be the most humane prison. The entire prison was designed to put people in solitary confinement. So every other jail cell had an exterior and an interior portion. So those who went to outside, every other prisoner was assigned to go outside. So in other words, you never had contact with the people next to you, and it drove them mad. It actually was more harsh than the prisons were today mentally. RP Gamer says in the game series Shin Megami Tensei, all these inherently good creatures like angels are just as evil as the demons, killing indiscriminately to get their way. And in many ways, that's kind of thought of from the eye of the beholder, because most evil things they rationalize their acts to be good anyway. Everyone's the hero in their own world. Thanos, spoilers, wanted to get the Infinity Stones to slaughter, destroy half of humanity to help the other half live. It's all in the eye of the beholder. Infinite, what's going on in there, man? Hey, we're talking about good going bad, man. How to use good creatures in your setting as adversaries, as like enemies, and not necessarily just turning them evil. So I think a good way is that, when with RP Gamer saying that the good creatures are killing people indiscriminately, it could be that the good creatures, no one thinks of themselves as being evil, especially the good creatures. Especially, I mean, a lot of them are hard-headed, right? So, if you have silver dragons, cloud giants, angels, doing war against evil, and let's say evil has infected a village, it might not be anything for an angel to want to go and slaughter the entire village. It's just 100 people, right? I can't pick and choose which one is going to be which. I know that evil hasn't corrupted this village. I'm just going to go down and slaughter every member of this family because their family line or fiendish sorcerers or something. Vincent says, but the question is, do we use moral ambiguity when talking about good as good, or give them a reason that makes the players stop and think? Well, and that's the conundrum in Dungeons and Dragons, which I find rather odd that people argue over, which is kind of the point of the game. The humans in the game, the mortals on the material plane, have ambiguity. At the same time, in the very concept of Dungeons and Dragons, there is a moral certainty to the world. There's a 9-point alignment system. That 9-point alignment system is true. The player characters and the humans, the mortals, don't apply to that. They have their own motivations, but the outer world creatures absolutely adhere to it, and they may expect people to adhere to it. Doesn't mean they're going to do it. That's where the drama comes from. Not arguing over whether alignment is good or whether it's a good system or bad system. It's an end game argument that people take out of the game to pause the game, when it should be something that is the whole point is to have that conflict within the game. Vincent says, sounds like the campaign of Warcraft 3. Killing this infected city is a small price for protecting the land from the undead. Digibyte, haven't heard of you before. We had one where the players were convinced they were assaulting a goblin and orc camp that was terrorizing villages, so they slaughtered them all. But it turned out they were under an illusion spell, and it was just a village of monks, young and old. And now that's a trope as well. They looked evil, but you find out that they weren't. He says, yeah, like the K, is it Quay or K alignment is done in the 13th age is better. Yeah, the typical do we kill the baby orc question. And my feeling is like, yeah, you always get people who want to argue over that thing. Do we kill the baby orcs? Do we kill the pregnant orc babies and things like that? The way alignment. Yeah. But it's not again, it's taking something that is an in-world element and taking it out the world to have to argue about the fact, when the whole point is that's the whole point of the role-playing game, is to actually role play that out. So another method of making the good people an adversary is, instead of making it a fetch quest, the good creatures have already decided for the player characters that they're wrong, and that they should be doing, quote unquote, the good thing in this fight. So for example, there could be a silver dragon that's like, hey, you need to join me. This Knight's Order needs to join me in slaughtering evil wherever it stands, right? And the PCs are like, no, we don't want to do that. That's not that doesn't make sense. Everyone's got a chance to be redeemed, and maybe the good creatures are like, no, I've been around longer than you. I know better than you. You're joining me, or you're my enemy. And that's a common trope. It's like, if you're not my ally, you're my enemy. Or and even that could be a manipulation by evil to get people at each other's throats. It's the Marvel Civil War fight, right? It's the Batman versus Superman fight, where you have these two icons of goodness, but they both feel like doing it in a different manner. Vince says, I still find this things are inherently good or bad thing super confusing. Sure, we are all playing in a different world, but you will always have a conflict of realism versus gamism with that. Again, that's taking an in-world element and removing it outside to have the argument about it. If it's an in-world element, that's exactly what it is. Dungeons and Dragons, of course, today it's not as important, but there are outer world places that are literally the embodiment of lawful neutral or chaotic evil or neutral evil or those kind of things, chaotic good. Those beings are part and parcel of that alignment. Um, um, I'm new to this channel. Subscribe for Eclipse phase content. Looking forward to DM advice and tips. Yeah. I'm not this video, but the content underneath all the other videos has the Discord channel. It's got the critical hit publishing that I write for. It's got all that information. So yeah, the Facebook groups, all that kind of business. So yeah. Digibyte says good and bad is ultimately a shift of perspective. The trick is getting the moral pushed versus gain and profit. And again, player characters are us. We have ambiguity. We have different motivations. We see the perspective. It's like looking at the world through this perspective of an ant versus us. The ant is going to look at the world differently than us, even though we as human beings look at the world differently. And that's the point of role playing. It's not to pull it out of the game to have a to have an meta game table fight without rolling the dice. That's the whole point of why we come to the table. He says you always have a problem with your characters when you don't understand the concept fully. If you as a player don't know that killing evil creatures is nothing to have bad dreams about. But the thing is, I think that's where growth comes in. He said, evening, DBJ. That's from Jared. I know in Wrath of the Righteous, Adventure Path campaign would throw evil-aligned weapons and armor with cool powers that the players choose to use. Made it for some, interesting interactions between players wanting cool items, but trying to stay good. And the point is that there are creatures and people with motivations that the players, the player characters, us, do not agree that something is good or evil, yet inherently in the game it is good or evil, right? So it would be an example would be my player is good. I'm going to take this sword and this evil sword and fight evil. Why am I being penalized for it? That's where drama comes in. Yeah, you're being penalized for it. Period. There's a cosmic alignment of alignment. I don't mean a cosmic conflict going on that humanity. There is no ambiguity for these other outer world beings. There's no ambiguity in a good dragon. There's no ambiguity in a blink dog. There's no ambiguity in celestial beings. But we have ambiguity. We may say, you know what, slaughtering 100 villagers is not worth it in the larger scope, whereas an immortal being says slaughtering 100 people is absolutely worth it. I wouldn't think twice about slaughtering 100 people to save millions. And it's not a matter of the players being right or wrong. It's a matter of this other creature thinks it's right. The player characters think they're right, and then you have conflict. A good game master would never use that against their players. A good game master says, great, okay, let's go down that path. Do you agree with them or not agree with them, without making a judgment call, because this is a fantasy world, as opposed to stopping the game, having arguments at the table, whatever. That's a waste of time. RP Gamer says, why don't we flip this? It's not like the characters that's evil, but the view of what is evil and wrong has changed. And of course, that change could be circumstance. The change could be in the player characters. The change could be in humanity. That change of focus could be through celestial beings or all of the above. Yeah, Infinite says, where is the line drawn between alignment and taboo? I don't know. That's the whole in your game setting. There could be beings that have absolutely drawn lines in the sand. And remember, to me, I look at powerful outer world beings like the Greek gods. They were always wrong. The Norse gods, many of them had faults. They had problems. They were not perfect. We're thinking of these beings as being, despite them being immortal or very long-lived, that they also have a perfect view of the world, and they absolutely don't have a perfect view of the world. Despite them having vast power and influence, they could still be wrong and think of themselves as being right anyway. So it's not a matter of the game master going, your player is wrong and I'm right. It's more like this the circumstances today, this being or this group or this faction or whatever feels that they are right, it's time for you to confront them and impose your view of the world on their view of the world, despite you being at a disadvantage in many ways. Vincent says, I personally always take the shortcut of thinking about being evil as being selfish and being good as being altruistic in D&D. Sure. Okay. I mean, I'm not arguing with you. What I'm saying is yes, because that is your worldview. That is your opinion. That is a great way to have conflict with these other things that don't agree with you, and leave it in the game, as opposed to saying, well, that's not right because my player character says killing orc babies is a good thing, because maybe along the game, maybe they change their mind, or maybe other beings go, you know what, maybe we should stop doing this, and everyone else changes their mind about killing orc babies, but the players still think it's right. Jared said there's no ambiguity with a fire elemental. You're either not on fire or you are. That's a good way to put it. Also, I feel that it's important to tell players their actions are aligned. Like before they do something, I might say, this is an evil act. I don't know if, yes, I agree, but I also kind of disagree. Not in principle, in motivation. Meaning, instead of just telling them that they're evil, just tell them that the powers that they are aligned to would not agree with their actions, even if the PC thinks so. And then don't go 0 to 60 with saying, hey, you're a paladin, you automatically lost all your powers. It's a in-game thing. I would start to have things shift and change rather than just going, here we go. Okay. He says it's difficult to judge ancient cultures by modern Western standards. Absolutely. Infinite says, okay, so let me ask, what is evil? It doesn't matter. That's my point. PCs, we role-playing people, when we start asking these things outside of the game, it's using energy that should go into the game. A PC can actually absolutely disagree with the intentions of, let's say you're playing a cleric or a paladin. Let's go straight to that, because that's the easiest thing, right? It's if a paladin, quote unquote, does something against the tenets of their god, or a cleric does something against the tenets of their god, and the PC is absolutely positively convinced that they're doing the right thing, and the divine being says they are wrong, it is not a judgment call of whether the PC is right or the godling is right. They are both motivated by what they have. Sure, the deity is more powerful than them and gives them their powers, but it doesn't mean the PC is wrong. It just means that we as humanity are complex creatures changing all the time. Celestial beings don't have to change. But instead of punishing people, or we having our own, feeling like our own thoughts and our own actions and our own desires are a metagame thing that we need to stop the action, it is put it in the game and use that as a method to create conflict. Maybe another divine being wants to recruit this cleric to their side, and the cleric's pissed off that, hey, I gave you my devotion for years, why are you leaving me? Maybe this other being's like, you know what, guess what, I'll help you out this time. I'll give you part of my quote unquote domain spells in place of this other being, since it decided to leave you, or something like that. For me, that energy should be in the game. That eternal conflict shouldn't be answered. It's not something that we can answer in an armchair. It's energy that we use in the game to have good and evil fight against each other, and PCs fighting even their own morality. Infinite says, is the act evil, the intention behind the act, the method that the act was carried out? In many ways, that's how things are judged. RP Gamer says someone in the world could easily see the PCs as evil, even if the PCs see themselves as good. Imagine an Orc Lives Matter movement. Yeah, absolutely. I actually started a game where goblinoids came into the city, and they had a wagon filled with the dead bodies of their children, and this knight's order killed them all, and then the orcs brought them into the city and said, look what these quote unquote holy knights are doing to us. And the evil orcs use that as a method to change fundamentally change people's opinions of what the knights were doing, because the people did not want to see children slaughtered, despite the fact that the goblinoids were in many ways using that as a method to further evil plots. But I started that. Infinite says, "Oh no, DBJ, I think these are great discussions, but for venues such as this, outside of game time, absolutely." Hey, I didn't mean it. I'm talking with you guys when I'm talking to the you, all of you guys in the chat. I'm talking to the greater form, like other people who are watching us. So I'm not criticizing. Don't get me wrong. Seriously, I'm talking about the people who may watch this later or new to the game or haven't even thought about this kind of thing, are like those who get caught into that infinite loop, that infinite role play, get into the infinite loop of what's right, what's wrong, fighting and stuff. I'm like, no. You want to take that energy, put it in the game. You don't want to take it out and have, arguments like that. Yeah. Jared says, I have way too much to say on this that I can type. Yeah, YouTube's comments only allow 200 characters, and sometimes they'll cut you off before that too. Yeah. Vincent says, in Germany, if you wanted to deny your military service, you had to go before a judge. They often gave you a moral dilemma where you could kill someone to save money. There was no right answer. And how many? Okay, that's a perfect example. The moral dilemma. A lifelong friend of mine was a police officer, and they had the exact same thing. They had moral dilemmas where they were in a situation. Police officer gets a call to a house with an armed suspect. They get into the house. There's an armed suspect. They turn the corner. They see a gun. They look up. The gun is being held by a 10-year-old child. Do you fire? Do you shoot a 10-year-old child? Okay. The primary rule of being a police officer is to save your own life, because if you don't save your own life, you cannot save the lives of others. An armed suspect is to be put down. Armed suspect is 10-year-old with a firearm pointed at you. Do you fire or not? And it's not. Of course, we in our own mortal realm shift our morality. Take a look at any post-apocalyptic world. Infinite says, "Hey DBJ, how do I join? How do I join the stream? You mean do you? Oh, you mean jump? You want to jump on in? You want me to? Oh, you want me to send you mean join in on the link? Yeah, I can do that. Let me copy this. I'll send it to you right now. Give me an opportunity to go to. There we go. Let me get you on private message, and then I'll bring you on in if that's what you want to do. Yeah, I can do that. So let me. I don't want to get too distracted because right now I can't see the chat, but there we go. Neth. Sorry guys. Sorry. I know you're in here. No, I don't want to do that. Actually, it would be easier if you do this for me. Do me a favor, Infinite. Send me a private message, because I'm losing my chat, and or I'm flipping around and I'm getting a little distracted. I don't want people to be lost out there. There we go. Boom. So send me a private message. All right. Yeah. RP Gamer says the one I can't join and everyone else wants to. yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's fun. Believe me, I get it. Tesla Ranger says, to a soldier, enemy army invading, must burn village to prevent enemies from restocking. To a local farmer, must not resist, enemy army will pass through and leave them alone. That isn't all. As a soldier, that's an often an important thing to do, right? You burn the food and supplies, but the people still live there, and yet you're being asked to basically ruin and or kill innocent people to make it hard for the enemy to go and kill more people. Vincent says, I should come too. Jared says, it's funny that the question presupposes other people coming to kill you. If no one agreed to conscription, I imagine the war would not last very long. And yeah, hypothetical situations. Yep. See, and isn't that the issue? There we go. Oh, we're going to have somebody on in. We can shit. We can have more than one person come on in if you really want to. If for you guys that don't know, Infinite Role Play has a channel, and we'll be joining me in just a moment because we're having this conversation here. Geez, 40 minutes into it, we're going to go way over an hour in this one. Yeah, Vincent says hypothetical scenario. There was no right answer, and for me, absolutely not having the right answer is there was no right answer, and for me, absolutely not having the right answer. Thought I'm muted. I muted myself. There we go. Okay. Sorry, I was getting my own voice in my head. What's up? Hey, wait, dude. What's up? First of all, introduce yourself to the larger world. Not that you need any introduction.
Now I'm muted. Yep. My name is Nelson. I am the psychotic mind behind Infinite Roleplay. And if you want to find me anywhere, 90% of everything I do is on Infinite Roleplay, but on DeviantArt, I'm freelance digital. I write, I draw, and sometimes I make music and animations. But yeah, hi.
Yeah, okay. He's being very modest. The man's a monster. I mean, like he doing videos, artwork at the same time, constantly working. I don't know where he gets the energy from. I am personally happy that he's able to put that energy out into the world so that the rest of us can consume it. Frankly, it's very hard to consume it all. I guess he's like me. Doing it over an hour live stream every day is really hard to consume that too. But anyway, I'll get back to you. But in the chat, Vincent says a good thing that soldiers don't always do that. In World War II, Hitler actually ordered to destroy everything in Germany, all roads, all bridges, all factories, but they did not do it. And that's the kind of thing that causes psychological harm. You know what I mean? When soldiers are ordered to do things that against their own private moral code is wrong, yet it may be the right thing to do in the situation. But anyway, dude, go for it, man.
No, the crux of the matter, I think, about the discussion is how do you define, not necessarily what is evil, but how do you approach defining what is evil? Are the acts evil, the intention behind the acts evil, or the method in which the acts were carried out evil? Like, what is the most important one of those three into defining what is good and what is evil?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get, because Digibite in the chat says something that I was going to say. He says he doesn't want to take away from the stream, but he says check out How to Be a Great Game Master. By the way, I listen to that dude, or because I tend to listen to my videos. He's in Japan now, but he's originally from South Africa. He has a great series on that. And he's got a ton of sage advice on it. And in many ways, like what we're doing right now, by having the discussion on what is good or evil before your players are into the game, especially if you want to have that cosmic, or you want to have that ambiguity in your world, you need to define it first so that we, the players, when we break those rules, we know what the end result is, right? Just like you said, we need to have we need to define it first, and then we need to know, okay, if I cross this line, this is considered an evil thing. Now, mind you, that evil may not be what I personally think, but it could be evil what the gods think, what the elementals think, what the celestials think, and then when we cross that line, whether those creatures want to penalize us, want to make us enemies, whether they want to recruit us, things like that. My my dismay is when people go 0 to 60. Like, oh, you broke your paladin oath. You have no powers. I'm like, it doesn't have to get to that point. Like, to me, the best thing would be someone else recruits you, right? Like, imagine you're a cleric and you wake up one day, you're like, oh yeah, guess what? Today one of your heal spells is like a power of darkness or something.
Well, back in the days when that was actually a thing, when breaking your oath, when you had to be lawful good, one home rule was you didn't have to be lawful good. Your paladin had to be in alignment that matched that of the god that you followed.
Right.
That was a homebrew rule. And if you did anything in antithesis to that alignment, then you could lose your powers. But the reason behind that is the paladin's powers came more, the idea that we had, our homebrew, was that the paladin's powers came more because of their faith. And anything that made them question their faith or act out of alignment of that faith, it would shake not only their beliefs, but in turn, it would trickle down to shaking their actual powers, you know?
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, let's take, because I'm going to summarize a little bit of what I'm seeing in the chat, right? Let's take a look at any extended post-apocalyptic world, especially zombie apocalypse, right? But any post-apocalyptic media, and it is the fall of society, and it's usually not about the apocalypse itself, but how do we as humanity, what things test us as human beings in society when we don't have any rules to play by, right? So it becomes a thing of, hey, in today's society, there's no reason to kill people indiscriminately for good. Whereas in apocalyptic society, you might say, hey, listen, those people, I don't know, stuck in that warehouse, they're surrounded by zombies. We're not wasting energy to get them out of there, right? Is that a good act or a bad act? Is that one of circumstance? Is that, and celestial beings don't see differences. They don't see shades of gray. A chaotic good outer world being or deity doesn't care about your situation. It's going to say, you are chaotic good, period. Whether you're a chaotic good knight or cleric or what have you, a warlock or something, you need to follow my rules. And I'm talking about the being. I'm not talking about as game master.
Yeah.
When you move away from that, you are quote unquote violating their tenets. But me as a game master, I would never tell you as a player you're wrong. I would just say you are in conflict with this other thing. You know what I mean? Jared makes a point. It's very annoying when GM attempts to trick or gotcha the players into doing an evil act, particularly when they want the paladin to fall. And that's where I'm trying to go at, right? Don't do the gotcha. In world, the paladin may fall, but they shouldn't be punished for it. Because how cool would it be for a paladin to have a conflict with their own oath or being or whatever? I just think that's a cool thing.
But
as opposed,
here's the thing with, okay, in regards to Dungeons and Dragons, Dungeons and Dragons, maybe not so much 5th edition since they've all but just got rid of alignments, but I've been playing since AD&D, so Dungeons and Dragons takes a really, really, really hard line approach to alignment, and they attribute, you have lawful good dragons, chaotic good dragons, celestials, and I've never really enjoyed that hard line approach to alignment. I enjoy the idea of, the Mayan gods, the Roman gods, how these are, divine, quote unquote, divine beings, these celestial beings, these powerful entities who are just as flawed emotionally and intellectually as the humans, as the mortals that they rule over. Right. And the idea of good and evil it was mentioned before. I think about, I forget, but about the notion of perspective. Right. And then the idea of a fire elemental. A fire elemental isn't good or evil. They're just on fire or fire. Well, I think that could be, change your perspective. A fire elemental sees fuel. Fuel is food, right? We're not evil. Human beings aren't evil, but that burger's mighty tasty, right? You need to eat fuel. You need to consume fuel to live. If the fire elemental doesn't burn things, it's not going to be a fire elemental. It's going to be gone. It's going to cease to exist. So it requires fuel to continue.
Right. And again, if let's say there's a abundant fuel 200 miles away, there's no conflict. But if that fire elemental comes into the city and starts consuming the resources of the people will assume that it is evil. You are taking away what we need to survive. And the fire elemental is not, or even fire being itself is saying, hey, I need this. I'm not doing it to be good or evil. It's in my very nature. And like you were talking about the eternal conflict, like the Greek gods or Norse gods or something, where they're flawed.
Yeah.
We look at them as flawed, and then they look at us as flawed, right? Neptune, let's say the god Neptune, it's like the god of the seas and such, and the people pray to Neptune because they're like, hey, I don't want my ship to capsize. And we look at Neptune like, dude, get a grip, stop making storms, you don't have to do this. And Neptune's like, well, it's in my nature, I make random storms, that's my thing, you know what I mean?
There's a bunch of things. One thing I want to say really quickly, as far as the question of flawed. All right, the reason Greek gods also usually see mortals as flawed is because we are temporary beings. We age, we die, we go away, right? We are ants to them. Like a human would look at an ant, or a dog, right? A dog can do tricks. You can grow attached to a dog, but ultimately, you're going to outlive that dog. They're going to grow old, get sick, and go away. You might be hurt for a little while, but you move on, you get another dog. That's human beings, right? Now imagine these divine creatures or these, super entities, right? But if you look at a vampire, vampires are presented as evil creatures, right? Blood drinkers. But essentially, a vampire is almost the same thing as a Greek god. They are immortal. They are unending. They're a god of the night. Yeah, the sun may destroy them, but under the darkness of night, they are eternal.
Right, absolutely.
So why are they seen as villains, as evil creatures, rather than gods? Gods whose blood, if you consume, could elevate you to their level.
Right, and if you, the White Wolf games makes a perfect example of losing your humanity or ascending to a different level. Like new vampires are distraught over what they have to do to live. The older ones don't have a problem with, killing mortals or sacrificing mortals for their own purposes. Even if those vampires had quote unquote good intentions, they know that some people need to be sacrificed to extend their lives. And I feel like using when different cultures meet each other and have different views of the world, that's absolutely great fuel to say, okay, settlers find another island. They find this island of beings. They sacrifice something to the volcanic god, right? And to them, that's not evil. And the people coming in, if those are player characters coming in, they're going to say, we need to stop this sacrifice because it's evil. To them, it's not evil, and it's not about punishing the differences. It's about allowing that the conflict is where the game is at, as opposed to being when we're rolling dice to punish a choice that PCs make, whether they feel that they're doing the right thing or wrong thing. That's up to them. That's us having fun, as opposed to me as a game master deciding for everyone else what is good or bad. Now I can see where the conflict can come in, because the conflict is that I'm making the judgment for powerful beings, but it shouldn't be the same thing as me making a judgment that the things in this game are good or evil.
Well, what you call says Digibyte. I'm trying to keep it tab a chat too, but it's on a smaller screen, so it's harder to read.
Yeah.
Digibyte says, sadly, in the real world, intelligence does not stop people eating animals. In many ways, first world countries are more likely to domesticate an animal than harvest wild animal compared to your aliens. Well, I think domestication, if you look at animals and the difference between a human being's intellect and sapience as in opposition to an animal, right? Think of that, place that same sort of point of view, that same perspective on something that is essentially eternal to a mortal. If what your world considers a god domesticates these animals, human beings, orcs, to the human beings and orcs, that is indentured servitude. That is slavery that would last thousands and thousands of years. They will be bred, and their existence would be perpetuated simply in the service of this single god. Is that evil? Or is it not?
Right. Right. And of course, the being, I mean, like you said, in many, this is a weird way to say this, but many of those eternal beings are trying to domesticate their own flock, right? They're trying to get them to stop thinking on their own and be a part of what they think is quote unquote the right way of living. Whether it's Thor and he's like, we're going to we're going to go to war against the giants, and that's our thing. We're going to harness the storm and destroy the giants. Whereas Athena might be like, hey, we need to use our wisdom and nature or something. And Hades, the god of Hades, is like, we're going to involve ourselves with death and bring the dead back to life and sacrifice ourselves to continue whatever machinations he has. But in their own minds, it's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong. I'm not.
I mistook the comment because one, I'm having a hard time keeping up with chat. Oh, I wanted to keep up with chat because they looked like they were live. They were lit up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I messed up.
Oh, you're fine.
But all right. So the whole question of using good creatures for evil, right? If I had a game, I've got a section in my World of Gemini for SMTT where in this adventure path there are essentially not sprites, dryads, right? They're essentially dryads. They're good. They want to make friends. They want to feel not dryads. What's the other one? Nymphs.
Nymphs, sprites, maybe.
No, I think nymphs. They're like sexy with the charm and D&D.
Yeah.
Or I've got a version of those where they try to make friends, right? But their father is a very twisted and evil creature. They aren't, but their father is. And they are bound by their father's will. All right. And in an attempt to break his daughters, who are essentially eternal, he has them under a compulsion that whoever they see as a friend, they are forced to bring them into a trap where one of the creatures fully under the control of their father will try to consume them, to kill them, to destroy them. They are the bait to kill player characters, to kill heroes, but it's not them that's doing it. Like, they don't want to.
Right.
But they're caught between the crux of keeping everyone at arm's length, because if they befriend them, they'll die, and feeling forever alone.
See, and that overt manipulation, in many ways, you're fine. That overt manipulation is the thing. To me, that's where that conflict comes in. That's where that thing is. Like in the chat, they're talking. They've gone down to Jared says, yeah, I'd rather starve than to eat my dog. You know what I mean? Like, people have different opinions. There's many cultures where eating their dog or their horse has been in their life for it's no big thing. And then you, and I say you as in the greater you, meaning me, us, say, hey, well, we think that's wrong. But in the context of this world or this setting or even this city, that's not a big thing. So I think there's I watched military training, and they teach them to raise a little white rabbit. They feed them, they name them,
Yeah.
they cultivate them. They have their little cage. They make sure they're trimmed, and then at the end of the training, they have to kill this rabbit and eat it. It's part of the training because they're trying to get them to mentally to train themselves to a different mindset, even though the people doing it don't want to do it.
Well, that's the question. That what you just mentioned about that training
Yeah.
is breaking taboos.
Yep.
Right. That's a Western taboo.
Yep.
I think it's almost akin to a bear. Right. A bear has bear cubs, much like other animals. A bear would have bear cubs, and if there's not enough food to feed the bear, that bear who just gave birth to these bear cubs will eat her own cubs.
Yep.
Right. Yep. I'd never eat my own children. I don't care if I starve and die. Right. But that's, logically, that doesn't make any sense. If I'm to perpetuate my species, I have to survive. That's the idea of the bear, right? It's I don't know how far you want to get into breaking taboos in your channel.
It can get pretty deep. I mean, it get pretty nasty, really. Okay. Because
all right, so let's take a question. Right, it's the idea of good and evil. It could be considered a construct that is the long game, right? Rather than the short game. No mortal can play the long game. We don't live long enough. Right. You can't see to the other side of the world. You don't have that vision. So the idea of, you mentioned Poseidon creating storms. Well, Poseidon has to create storms to kill hundreds of thousands of living things every few years, because the only way that the world can remain sustainable is at a specific cap of creatures consuming natural resources. It's not evil, right? Like genocide. We consider genocide evil because genocide is usually localized to a culture or race. But if it was blind genocide, doesn't care about culture, race, just millions of people dying, that actually could benefit our world as far as sustainability from a completely emotionally divorced place.
Right. I mean, even in the chat, we were talking about Grimchild says the training, meaning killing the rabbit, is to dehumanize the soldier, destroy empathy, and is evil. And Grimchild ended it with, and is evil, like it's an evil act to dehumanize the soldier. But in the larger scope, and I'm purely role playing. I'm thinking here, not talking about your personal opinions, but let's say there's a goodly king who has instituted this training to dehumanize a soldier because they need the soldier to engage in acts that they normally wouldn't because they are just and good people. You see it, you know what I mean? See, and that kind of conundrum to me is gaming fuel rather than me arguing with you, and you meaning not just you, Nate, but everybody. Like, hey, let's throw that in the game, man. You know what I mean? And to me, immortal beings are like that. They see things so hundreds of years, thousands of years in the future. So to them, they're participating in the continuation of life or society in their minds. But us, like you said, we're like ants. We don't understand that. Hey, you're killing me today. Like, don't do that. You know,
it's like, again, going back to like a religious doctrine. There's religious doctrine that you should never, not every religion, but that you should never lay with a family member, right? You shouldn't, have children with your sister, and some people might look at that, or some other religions might look at that and go like, no, that doesn't make sense. My sister's hot, right? But scientifically, if you do that, you actually create biological problems, mutations, susceptibility to disease. You decrease the average IQ, and in generations' time, you could become something subhuman. You're where mental retardation and all sorts of bad things are there. Now, you as a person might not have had that forethought, especially back in fantasy days, medieval days or Eurocentric days. But something else did, and they deemed that as an evil act.
Correct. But I'm only challenging you on this because I think it's a cool idea. right? But imagine post-apocalyptic world, nuclear war, or humanity sent seed ships off into space, or something where the population is so low. What if, in order to continue life, our own little society, we must interbreed to some certain extent with each other? Um, then the moral quandary is like, you're going to have individuals in that society that say, no, we have a hard line. Family members are off, blood relatives are off, we do not do that. You're going to have other people who are just as determined to maintain their humanity, but they're saying, well, wait a minute, we need to breed. We have a limited number of people in our group. At some point, we're going to have to break that taboo in order for us to live as a
Well,
society.
that's a taboo. See, that's the thing, right? And scientifically, if you have enough genetic diversity, it's possible.
Right.
All right, it's a question of genetic diversity, as far as we know, But we might have fantasy races where that's not a case. Maybe orcs are orcs born because of generations of elven interbreeding, which raises their strength, their endurance, their aggression. They are warriors at heart, but maybe it retards their higher intellectual functions. Maybe divorcing them from magic because they don't have the mind for such connection and calculation. Which, I mean, it could be an interesting thing, and maybe for them that's why it's bad, not because it creates this disease and killing off elves, but it creates like the dehumanization argument, the thing with the bunny. Are you dehumanizing someone? You're just teaching them what's necessary to survive on the battlefield. You do this for survival's sake, right? A soldier is the sword of the empire, and a sword needs to attack. All right, a shield needs to defend, but a soldier is not a shield. You have other things for that. Who was it? I think it was Vincent said something about it's a problem only when they return to society. But that's in modern day society, right? That's not Roman. That's not Roman. That's not ancient Greek. Where you have warrior cultures. To be a warrior is a thing. Your time as a warrior is a thing. There's ancient African cultures, like I see, DBJ with his twists up his dreads. There are certain warrior cultures where the warriors are the only ones within the tribe that are allowed to have dreads. And when they become married, when they have children, when they become, they have to cut off their dreads because they are no longer warriors. It's a representation of a stage in their life that they must move on from. Going back to dreads, some that don't become elders, and they are no longer capable of being warriors, but now their dreads can touch the floor. It represents their experience in life. Same thing with certain Native American cultures, where your hair is an extension of yourself. It represents the journey and memories in life. And, this dehumanization is done because you need to be of a certain mindset to protect these people from anything outside that can be perceived as evil.
I'll make it. I'll give a perfect example of something that we don't consider to be evil, but could very easily, in a different context, be considered evil. Let's think of ancient samurai. All right, yes, I'm going to be a little bit stereotypical here, but ancient samurai. We know that if they dishonor themselves, they cast dishonor on their family, even in battle, that they commit seppuku, they commit ritual suicide, or they are killed. A person who is a samurai level cannot be dishonored by a lower caste person. Did you speak to me, or you didn't bow to me? You didn't lower yourself below my standard? You're dead. And the people there did not think that was evil. In the book Shogun, great book series, not series, but the book itself, was Europeans go to Japan, and this one, long story short, this one sailor who's the main character, a European, ends up being elevated to samurai level. He's walking along, and a normal person who does not know he's a samurai, a Japanese individual, spits on him. One of the other samurai, before anything can happen, takes his sword out and slices, kills this man. Pulls this, it's not his sword. It was a sword that was found after an earthquake. But anyway, takes the sword, kills the man. The European's just like, what the hell did you just, like, he's flabbergasted. The family comes over, and the one that killed this innocent man calmly explains, listen, this outsider is Gaijin. He's not Gaijin. He's samurai. You dishonored him by spitting on him as an outsider. The family, instead of being upset, they bow down. They're like, we're really sorry. So the Europeans trying to get a hold of this situation because the samurai is about to kill the rest of the family, right? You should have known better. You should have asked. This is your fault. He ends up saying to these people to placate them, he's like, listen, since I'm the samurai and I was the one offended, not only is my honor accepted, I'm going to name the sword after the one that is killed. We found this sword. It was an earthquake. It was uncovered in the dirt. I'm going to rename this sword. What was your family member's name? The family responds, he disrespected you. He doesn't have a name. He was just an oil seller. I'm not going to give you his family name. In other words, he was a nobody. And he ends up naming the sword Oil Seller. And the sword ends up having this legendary name later on in the book. So long story short is murder, open murder of innocence is a normal thing. It was just a normal cultural thing. And we as game players in games, like that's a thing that we love to get into. Where do you think, Legends of Five Rings comes from? But at the same time, if you change your perspective, it's friggin' murder.
Yeah. That's what the chat. I can't keep up with freaking chat. They just going and going and going and going. The idea of there was one comment about incest not being a thing back in the day because birth defects weren't as numerous. That's not true. If you look into the European family lines, they interbred. They had problems. They had mental retardation. They had physical deformities. Same thing in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, they interbred. King Tut's parents were brother and sister, right? They interbred. They had a lot of deformities themselves. So the idea that birth defects weren't as numerous, I think, is a misnomer. They actually were. A lot of bad things happen. Then there's one about killing someone. Murder is just inherently evil. That's not true. Inherent evil. I do believe that there is a difference between good and evil, but it is a difference we as people aren't capable of truly seeing. And I think that should be represented in the games that we play. That there is no inherent evil. The idea about I forget, but the lower classman spitting on what is essentially a samurai, thinking that samurai is an outsider, that's an evil act. You're bringing dishonor to your family. You're bringing dishonor to a samurai. That is an evil act. In the code of Bushido, that is evil, right? In chivalry, the chivalric code, the actual chivalric code, not this bullshit. Chivalry is dead. No. The actual chivalric code, rape is permitted, and it is not evil. If it is the rape of a woman captured of an enemy soldier, right? So.
Sorry. We got on the subject of like evil and incest, and I actually just made me think about something. For example, orcs, half orcs, very traditional common thing, role playing games. What if orcs, the way they are, the bestial nature, the quote unquote inherent evilness in them, the half orcs and whatnot, could have been caused by, in this fantasy world, incestuous breeding, right? So this thing happens. They get this genetic trait through incestuous breeding because that is part of, which may have become a necessity, now becomes their culture today. And the higher races, which don't have incestuous breeding, look at them as evil, but their incestuous breeding has helped them survive to this day. The bestial nature, the ruggedness, the ability to overcome their enemies physically, the ability to what would you say, turn off their moral compass to accomplish their goals by killing their own, killing others, leaving their own people to die, to be brutal, could be an absolute survival mechanism today. And they may not want to lose that incestuous breeding as their culture, because it is how they have developed now. Whereas, say, the quote unquote elves today may look down on them because technically, if they started the interbreeding, that's what they'll become. So anyway, it just made me think about using that as a method in the game to talk about quote unquote good and evil, or rather taboos and not having those taboos.
Yeah. Vincent's like, let's get back on topic, which is probably a good idea because I can rant and expand and expound topics like, okay, back on topic. The reason I'm ranting, the nature of my rant, is to try to question the method in which good and evil are defined, so that the answers that arise can be the impetus of using normally perceived good creatures to permit what would be considered evil acts. That's it. I was actually trying to stay on topic. Didn't sound like it, but that was it. You know, like an angel coming down and wiping out a nation, right? Maybe the nation could be, okay, the story in the Bible of Job,
yep,
right? Or of Job, right? Job was a righteous man, but evil things were allowed to happen to Job to prove his faith, essentially. You know? Now, I mean, in Christianity, you can't get gooder than God, right? So why would God allow these evil things to happen to a righteous man, to a good man? You know? Here's something where this is an evil event. This is bad stuff happening, right? Now, if we can take that and accept that in our normal lives and personify that in a sort of larger scope that is easier to understand in our games, I think we could have so many great and amazing games. Like, DBJ, you mentioned before how you had goblins show up with the bodies of their children, right? But it seemed like they were just evil, but playing on the sympathies to perpetuate their evil. I had a game, and I do this, where players were hired to kill goblins, right? Because everybody kills goblins. Goblins are always bad, right? But the goblins in question weren't bad. They were robbing from the city, stealing from the city, killing people because trolls had moved in on their tribal lands and started killing goblins, and it was the only way that the goblins could survive. You know, the goblins weren't evil. They were just trying to survive in the only ways they knew how. You know, and I think, you know, it's not to trick paladins or anything into committing evil acts, but it's to play on the notion of what is good and evil, and how I like to play with the players' perceptions and emotions rather than their characters, because you get a more genuine response when you do that.
Right.
And players are evil. That's the thing. Players are evil. All right. When you have, you know, thousands of people playing and their default thing is it green? Kill it. That's pretty evil. Okay. So if that's the case, send good things. Send a maiden after them. Haha. Who's an evil little bitch, right? And let her survive for a bit, because they're just, oh, it's just a pretty little girl who's a princess we have to save from the dragon. You know, what if this chick was sleeping with the dragon? You know, I forget the stories because the names are so weird, but a Nordic story about a young girl who's actually a half dragon. She's the daughter of a dragon, and the woman was sleeping with the dragon, but they thought that the dragon had kidnapped her. So here comes this great hero who he goes and he saves her as a young woman. And she was also betrothed to this hero's son. So slays the dragon, and this hero's son marries the woman. They grow old together. They raise their daughter together, and eventually the wife dies, right, in the story. And he was always disconnected from his wife. His daughter started growing more disconnected from him. In the story, she would actually call to her father and say he's not her father. And to shorten up the story, this girl was actually a half dragon, becoming more draconic in nature. So here comes the hero's son going to his elder father, and trying to get him, the dragon's alive, the dragon's alive, and he's trying to steal my daughter, and he's lying to her, and he's tricking her mind. Who discovers eventually it was never his daughter by blood. But at the end of the story, he, basically causes his own father's death because his father, this great hero, was actually the evil one. Because the dragon fell in love with the woman, had a child with the woman, and was waiting for his child to come to him, because the dragon is a shapeshifter, and he changed into the daughter's blanket this whole time. So he was raising his daughter slowly before she came to, and then the son of this hero was like, no, you're still my daughter because I raised you, and I will always love you as a daughter. And then they actually became like an extended family.
Okay.
The dragon went into human form, and they lived out the rest of their days as such. Yeah. But it's a story that plays with the notion of who is good and who is evil.
I'm gonna summarize a little bit in the chat. There's something about the nature of children, the act of having children in the story, that I think whether it's a biblical text, whether it's history, whether it's media, many times tends to be the crux of how we measure good and evil, right? So a good example is a great story, Lone Wolf and Cub. And mind you, the story of this story has been changed. The name's been changed, time period's been changed. But essentially, a great warrior who's not a parent at all, village destroyed, whatever, there's a small child. Or he's got a family, his family's killed except for the small child. Doesn't matter how the story goes. There's just a great warrior, there's a small child. He sticks a sword in one side of the child, equidistant from a small toy. And he says to himself, if the child crawls towards the toy, I'm gonna kill it. Because I can't take care of this kid and still take revenge and slaughter the evil enemies that killed everyone. If the child goes towards the sword, I'm gonna train this child to basically become my heir, to learn everything that I know, because that's the only thing I know. Of course, in the story, the child walks towards the sword, and this man, Lone Wolf and Cub, he ends up battling with this child on his back or under his arm with the sword and stuff, and the child grows and whatnot. But in many stories, there becomes a challenge when, hey, I know the world because it's this way, it's black and white, there's no big deal. And then you insert this innocent life, and then all of a sudden our concepts start to change on how we deal with the way we handle the world. So post-apocalyptic settings, hey, we're going to, those people stuck in that building surrounded by zombies, we're not going to save them because we got to save ourselves. And then a small child goes, isn't that evil? Or you're not going to save those people? Hey, daddy, you're going to just let them suffer like that? And then all of a sudden, guess what? Our world changes, right? We're just like, hell no, hey, we're going to do something different. I'll slay the world for a kid. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times when it comes to it personally on taboo levels, it's like, hey, everything's good up until my kid is affected, and then the world can just burn. You know what I mean? So that's another trait too that really changes people's perspective. I call it NIMBY, not in my backyard, which is like everything's cool till you tell me that I've got to do something, and then all of a sudden things start to change. A perfect example is a guy that does documentaries, and for some reason I can't remember his name, was talking about war, and went to senators and said, why don't we have a law that says if we have to go to war, your children are conscripted first to go to war. If we ever have to make challenge for war, guess what? Senators and representatives were just like, interviews over. I'm not talking to you. Blah 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 blah. Because the minute it became NIMBY, minute it was like not in my backyard.
It's
hey, things change. You know.
It's another. You mentioned senator. You mentioned that. You mentioned the draft. There's I hope I don't get you in trouble for this, but the question of feminism and equality is, you want to be equal, you want to go to the military. Well, if we bring back the draft, then that would make all women mandatory for the draft as well. And I've watched, social experiments on this, and it gets really divisive at that point, But going back to the Lone Wolf and Cub, I know you're talking about, because I see, I don't even know how many movies about that. But my favorite is a quote from the old school 90s album, Liquid Swords from GZA.
Yeah.
Where they kill the mother, and he's like, you hear the voiceover is like, boom, that very dead tone. And he goes, choose the sword and you will join me, right? Choose the ball and you will join your mother in death. You do not understand my words, but you must choose, right? Like every old school martial art dub in that album is great, and I think great feel for this too, because the Shoguns, and there was the little kid when he mentioned, my father was, the Shogun's decapitator, right? Oh, it's amazing. I think I might have lit something on fire when I mentioned the Bible in chat. It wasn't to question theology, right? I'm divorcing myself from my faith to question the notion of how we measure or decide what is good and what is evil, right? The same thing you mentioned, Lone Wolf and Cub. It's the question of what is good, what is evil, how do we perceive it? Mayans weren't bad guys. They kidnapped and murdered thousands of people to ensure that the sun rose, right? If the sun didn't rise, the world died, according to what they believed, right? They didn't kill him because, I don't like their hairstyle, right? That wasn't the reason. They were trying to ensure that the world lived, right? That the monsters and devils of Xibalba didn't rise in the shadows of the dark, they also mutilated themselves. There's is it Mayans or Aztecs? I think it was Aztec. When one of the royals or the Aztec king would ritually bleed themselves by cutting, slicing open their fiddly bits. There's a lot of things that was good, right? Bloodletting, we might see bloodletting and the worship of blood as something evil because of our taboos, our beliefs, and our religions. But you as a GM have to be more than yourself. You have to be everyone except the players. Yep. So, I think in that way, you really got to be willing to play with the idea of what is good, what is evil, and let that play out naturally, because it is as it has been as divisive and cause for conflict in chat. So shall it be on the tabletop.
Yeah, I mean, and above all, guys, I am trying to promote the idea that what we're talking about in the chat, because the chat, us, you and I going back and forth, I'm trying to promote the fact that energy is not grounds for us to be at conflict, but for us to throw that in the game and make that conflict. Not to make a personal judgment of what we feel, but to take that, and mind you, that's a hard thing to do. For example, talking about throwing the Bible up in the chat, right? It's not a matter of arguing the merits of that in the game. I mean, I'm sorry, arguing the merits of whether it's right or wrong. I'm saying taking those concepts, throwing it in the game, deciding what's good and evil in the game, And then when people break that, when they go outside that role, when they go up against these larger celestial beings that are telling them that they're wrong, and then not punishing them for making wrong decision, but saying, oh, players don't agree with them. Okay, let's see what happens. Or the players decide that they don't want to change, but everybody else around the PCs changes. Let's play with that, right? It's about us using that energy, coming together, and not. That's why I've always been of the point, like, there's nothing wrong with alignment. It's something wrong with us, right? It's not that the alignment system is bad or broken, and we're just using. We have too much creative energy and power. We're just misguiding it in the wrong way. We're doing it. We're attacking. We tend to attack each other. We get triggered. We want to, take our football and go home, basically, right? Like, oh, I can't believe you punished my paladin, blah, 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 blah. Or if setting up a situation where they, quote unquote, have to kill orc babies and then punishing them for doing it or not doing it, that's wrong. I'm saying that's wrong. I'm saying, like, make the orc baby situation and then play it out. Let it play out naturally. Let it play out with the players just slaughtering them and then looking at the outcome. Let it play out with the players are like, we're not going to kill them. We're going to bring them back to society. Let that part play out. Let those hard moral choices play out. Let them be forced by a greater good being to slaughter 100 innocent villagers, and they go, well, I'm not doing that. I don't care. I'm a cleric and they gave me power to do it. I'm not going to slaughter them and bring down hellfire or something, divine light from the sun to kill innocent people. I'm not going to do that. And then let that be part of the game and go, I don't know how it's going to turn out. Be a game master, say, create problems, not solutions, and refocusing our creative power and our positive energy into creating better stories. That's just my thing.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm probably gonna have to leave like
we
10
need
minutes ago, but this talk about, okay, good creatures gone bad. How about an idea of one or maybe more, say, gold dragons? Because gold dragons are supposed to be the most wondrous dragons, right? They're supposed to be the good guys. Run in and take over an entire region in every single empire of that region. Call it their own, rob them of all their gold and silver and wealth, right? But not to keep to themselves, but to trickle out and give to everyone, and use, China, old school Russia, socialist empires, and other, things that are despotic. But the motivation for your dragons could be the stealing and redistribution of gold in such a way, because greed blinds the heart of mortals.
Okay. Chat, yourself, since you already started, myself, the chat, here's what we're going to do. We're going to create, we are going to use this essentially near, gold dragons are near godlike, right? They're both celestial, they're both demigods, they're powerful beings. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an idea someone can steal from this idea that this gold dragon comes in and literally dominates an entire culture. And let's create the problems that happen when the players agree with what's going on, and the problems that happen when the players disagree with what's going on, all of it at the same time, right? So I'm going to add to this. I'm going to add that this communist regime by this gold dragon, the gold dragon intends on doing a I was about to say euthanasia, eugenics program. The gold dragon will decide the merits of which people breed together. It will assign marriages based on what it thinks will create better people in the future. And there's a community of people that don't want this to happen because they fall in love with who they want to fall in love with. Mm-hmm. They want to breed with who they want to breed with. They want to marry who they want to marry. And they're trying to escape like an underground railroad of sorts. So I'm just throwing that out there. And then I want other people in the chat and yourself to like add to it.
Oh, and me? You're mentioning eugenics. What if the gold dragon's eugenics is actually right?
You mean that literally it's choosing when it chooses people to be together, it's literally making better people,
Yeah,
like morally stronger and more intelligent, healthier.
it's like
Um,
breeding dogs.
yeah, well, Vincent, and I'm pointing Vincent out here. He says sounds like East and West Germany back in the day, and Vince is from Germany. He knows, like, culturally speaking, a little more intently than the rest of us
Yeah.
about using a eugenics program. And the Gold Dragon,
Well, eugenics is wrong. Eugenics doesn't work. But the idea in this fantasy thing that eugenics does work, right? And combined with what they did when they settled the Americas, primarily in South America, because if you were black, they bred you. That was just it in North America. But in South America, they bred their slaves for a purpose. That's why you have, the diaspora is much larger in South America, where you have much more, attractive women, you have much more athletic men, just normally, right? Where it's kind of amazing because they were bred for those purposes, like dogs. It's really messed up to think about it, but divorce your emotions from that to create this narrative of this dragon. The dragon could see us like dogs, and for the benefit of this empire, for the benefit of this region, and this perceived peace, you have a communist gold dragon using eugenics to breed mortals like dogs.
and okay, let's take this a little further. The people that he's putting together aren't just like a single young lady and a single young man. He's mixing and matching the men and women in the community, despite their protests, if they have any. So one gentleman might be with three women that he chooses, and then out of those three women, there might be one lady who's with like two other people that he chooses. It chooses, rather, could be male. Gold dragons are probably neither male or female; they just are. And so, like Grimchild says, sounds awful, lawful neutral, lawful evil, not lawful good. Absolutely, right?
Yeah, well, see that.
And I love
that hard line in D&D alignment. That hard line alignment. That's only in one when I talk about RPGs and when I talk about things, I like to I've played I can't even count how many different systems I've played, right? So I want to take them all. Like it could still be lawful good, right?
Ooh, ooh. I like RP Gamer. Oh my God. He says the dragon leads a Logan's Run style society where it removes anyone too old or not perfect for his vision. See,
that's another good one.
Yeah.
I mean, not good. Fever.
Yeah, I could imagine. Okay. The PCs can be either from within the community or outside the community. So what if a PC is one of these is a fully grown member of this eugenics experiment, and his or her beliefs are now challenged after hunting down the quote unquote older members of society, ends up accidentally or maybe even purposefully leaving the society, and then confronts people who don't think the same way.
But I'm noticing Grimhild.
Yeah.
Grimhild? But Grimhild is seems to be defining it as, mentioning the hard line of alignments, neutral, lawful, and defining evil as denying agency, right? To that degree is evil. That's what we were talking about before, the method in which you define what is and what is not evil. That's the method in which you are defining it. But is that the method, like is that one method the tabletop? In your game, this dragon may be evil. But in our game, this dragon may be good, but in the player's eyes or the character's eyes, evil, right? Ultimately, this was supposed to be how to use good creatures in the monster manuals as bad guys. Well, there you go. If that's evil, maybe to the dragon it's not.
Well, and then okay, I'm going to get a little.
How about this? Another thing. Gold dragon. In this world, gold is not a resource. It's not a mineral that can be mined. All the gold coins are forged from the scale of gold dragons. And this gold dragon had enough. Nope.
Yeah, we keep the gold keeps our society going. It's part of our economy, but the dragon may not like that. And its purpose is to change society so that people don't want to turn gold dragons into gold coins any longer. So
communism is a fucking flawed thing. We know that. It's a bad thing, Grimhild. But that's the reason the heroes got to stop it.
Yep. Or let me get a little nuance here.
All right.
When the gold dragon began this community, it literally prevented people having agency. Kidnapping, essentially, right? Forced indoctrination. But after a couple of generations, they believe the indoctrination. The gold dragon no longer may be holding such a threat over them to get them to change. So the choice again would be, did the dragon engage in evil acts in the past? And is the dragon still engaging in evil acts today? Because they are already this is their culture now. Yeah. The human beings or humanoids that it is doing believe this is the culture. If the dragon leaves and they maintain their culture, is this still an evil culture for engaging in those acts? And I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm saying that as presented, this conundrum, this is what they believe in. Hey, when you get 33, you need to die. Or hey, I've got a skin tag. I've got a cold.
A dragon that believed in Marxist beliefs, not understanding what the future would hold, and became what it hated without realizing.
Or it's so long-lived, it doesn't matter that it doesn't work. It's going to continue it until it does work.
I could just be bored.
It could be pretty bad, But man, we're going on for it might be 2 hours on this thing. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I love this stuff because for me, this is RPG fuel, right? This is our role-playing game fuel. This isn't, for me, is not something that divides people, but it's like, yeah, we should be in doing these things because it's that other pillar. It's that social pillar. It's that mental pillar to go, okay, we've got ourselves our combat. We got ourselves our social interactions. We got ourselves our environment. This is something else. Yes, it's hard to write it down, but really good game systems, the fluff involved in it always deals with these things. Dark Sun deals with this kind of thing. Eberron deals with this. Some of your greatest settings that you go, man, I really like that setting, deals with that. Conan deals with this. I mean, even these some settings are dark and gritty, some are high fantasy, but it doesn't matter. Though, what can I say? The idea that today I'm right, but tomorrow I might be wrong, even if my beliefs stay the same. It is a thing that I think can continue. That's where the conflict comes in. Because if there's no conflict, there's no story, right? There's no, if countries aren't fighting each other, if people aren't having conflict with each other, if factions aren't disagreeing, there's no story. And sure, I'm just making example, like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing is a big thing when it comes to conflict. An evil person does not may not want the world to burn, right? So back in, I believe it was World War II, the mob, the United States government made deals with the mob to protect the country because they needed that. In Japan, the Japanese had deals with the Yakuza to protect their country, right? It's, hey, circumstances are different. We used to be at odds, not anymore. We don't even agree with each other. But today, guess what? Temporarily, yeah, we're going to be united. And that's where that conflict comes in. So I think those kind of things are important to add into the game and not remove. And of course, we're still friends, right? We still want people to play with. If you don't have anybody to play with, then there is no role playing game, right?
Personally, I think the attitude of these kind of things being wrong and like I swear when they had that button thing or that card that I forget what the white button, whatever it was, where you flip the card, we can't talk about this. We got to skip this. I was always so against that because it's a method for skipping over conflict, and I think the way I see RPGs, right, is a method. It's a performance, and I've done acting in my past, and I'm kind of a performance actor, and I believe you should, delve into yourself and pull these aspects of yourself and put them into your characters and explore that. Right? It's great for story. It's an amazing bit of fun, and it can also serve as a bit of self exploration. They were doing a test not too long ago about how RPGs actually help people with PTSD because it RPGs in the very nature is a safe space regardless of the subject matter. You could talk about murder, you could talk about incest, you could talk about like even child rape. I have a villain in one of my campaigns right now who's a pedophile. And role playing that villain twists my stomach all up. But it's necessary for the nature of what's going on. And I know if it twists me all up and makes me want to vomit, it's probably going to be doing the same thing to my players. And they're going to want to stop this guy. But how far within or without the law are they willing to go? And that's conflict.
Hey man, one of the there's a movie out there. I'll give you the name of the movie, but you guys will probably guess it anyway. There's a movie out there that completely encompasses this small taboo act justifies me killing on a level unsurpassed in movie history. John Wick. John Wick is an evil character. According to, he committed murder. He put a criminal overlord into power in this city by slaughtering all of the enemies. And what happens to him? Somebody kills his dog given to him by his deceased loved one. And that movie rationalized, yes, Vincent Shot, they killed my dog. At that point, even if you are a complete pacifist, there are people that are like, you know what, that rationalized every other act he did in that movie. Yeah, but Vincent Shine says John Wick is clearly evil.
Because they didn't just kill his dog, they stole his peace.
Yeah. I mean, and here we are, same as the guy from Taken, right? The guy from Taken, he was what was he? Like a black ops CIA agent that retired. And he even says on the phone, I'm a guy with a certain set of skills. Like he's practiced killing people. His job was to kill people in mysterious ways. And he's like, you took my daughter? Rationalize. Boom. I'm the good guy from now on, from here on out. If doesn't matter what I do, it's Equalizer. Another one. Look, I tried to open the door and leave, but you guys just pushed me.
A movie that you might not want to watch, and not the American version, the actual Asian version. Okay, Old Boy.
Yes. Old Boy. Who was
the American version?
Yeah,
that one. There's things that happen that make you go, oh, right? But it's a great story.
Well, Vincent brings up Jason Bourne. Okay, Jason Bourne only became quote unquote a good guy by hitting his head. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but yeah. Technically, he hit his head and became a good guy. Does that and let's spread this out, right? We're following Jason Bourne's eyes. So from his point of view, everything he's doing is for a good purpose. But you start to spread that out, there's a bunch of people who still want their pound of flesh from this dude. And are they wrong for demanding their pound of flesh from a person committed a ton of evil acts,
Yeah.
even though today,
is a really brute force way of dealing with nature and nurture.
yep.
Right.
And again, what a great way to delve into that. If someone makes up a PC player character, is like, listen, my character was this evil bastard, blah, 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 but he doesn't remember any of it. But I'm playing him as a good guy. And having conflict with other people who remember him or remembers the evil acts done, but they haven't identified this individual yet. A change of heart before. Well, Vincent says he had a change of heart before his amnesia because he didn't want to kill that little kid, right? And that was due to previous trauma from that point, where he's like, then he gets his humanity back because the training killed off his empathy and his humanity. So that makes the other people that he chose to get in a program, they turned him evil. He gets his goodness back. He hits his head. He's like, I don't remember the evil that I did. And back and forth. And
I mean, you're describing God. Nikita.
Ooh, Nikita.
Nikita is the movie. Nikita is the TV series.
The TV show. There was a long-running series, Nikita. And that was another one. Drug-addicted girl accidentally kills or in a drug.
No. She on purpose killed the cop. She was high as hell when she did it. But the cop killed someone else, and the cop was evil at that moment in time because they actually murdered someone else who didn't need to be murdered. But if you watch the series, there's spoilers and there's all sorts of other stuff behind that.
Yep.
I really got to go, but I want to just bring up one thing as far as not D&D, not role-playing game, but writing in general. When you're talking about characters and writing, the alignments in writing aren't good, lawful good. There's the hero, the anti-hero, the villain, and the anti-villain. And I think you seeing things through that lens can broaden your scope as to what you can use as a villain, whether their nature be good or not. You know, like I throw this up on Facebook a lot, different groups, where Lich, right? Liches are usually seen as male. Well, I have a female Lich who was essentially a woman who got bought, sold, raped, and beaten during her life. And her last master was a mage who, when he wasn't beating her or raping her, right, she was reading his shit. And that led her down the path of magic, which led her to becoming a Lich, which led her to seeking out and murdering men, never women. Right? So what is she, good or bad?
Hey, how many times have the Greek and Roman gods far and beyond over punished a mortal for something that they mistakenly or purposefully did? Is the punishment of the Medusa conducive to being like, you know what I mean? And now the Medusa's evil, but you're like, well, wait a minute, like
it wasn't just Medusa. It was Medusa and her two sisters.
Yep. So, do you feel sorry for the Medusa? Well, if you're a human being living in that world, you're going, dude, you're turning all my friends to stone. You need to stop this, right? But in the immediacy, the warriors are like, the Medusa needs to die. But in a bigger scope, the Medusa needs to be saved and cured, right?
And then the right thing to do.
Right.
The Medusa, the Gorgon. In D&D, Gorgon's in this little metal bullshit. That's not what a Gorgon is, okay? Medusa, Stheno, and I forget the last one. But they're the Gorgons. The one with snake heads that turn dudes to stone, right? They got pretty faces and snake bodies, and they turn dudes to stone. They turn them to stone in the story, not because they wanted to. Because they need. Actually, you know what's funny about the whole Gorgon thing? I got another thing where a gargoyle falls in love with the Gorgon because the gargoyle's already stoned.
So yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway,
but even Vincent. Oh, see, and they're talking about the Greek gods. Like, what do you say? Arachne, who was better at spinning than Athena, and she cursed her to be a spider. I mean, like all of those things were like human beings. What the gods viewed as evil.
Really, really modern version of this whole thing.
Okay.
Whether you liked it or not, just hear this out. The movie Black Panther.
Yeah.
Warmonger.
Oh my God. Yeah. Or I mean, Black Panther's dad, was he evil when he killed T'Chaka? When he killed Killmonger's dad, he was protecting his people. He wanted to keep them safe from the rest of the world who would exploit them. Wasn't wrong. He wasn't mistaken about that. He didn't imagine that.
Reasons. No, that was the reasons.
Right. He did. He was being, like Vince said, he was lawful as shit. Like he was following the law. He was following the traditions. He was protecting his people. In his mind, he was doing the right thing. He was sacrificing one for the whole, right? His act sparked this whole thing. I mean, this whole thing about legacy and 2-hour stream in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, Jared. Okay. We're going to have to continue this style at a different time because I didn't think I'd actually be able to do this live stream and then I go over 2 hours, right? Okay. So, thank you very much for joining me. I'm going to sign out and then I'm going to let you close out the stream. So of course, you guys know who I am. I'm DBJ. If there's somebody out there who's not watched any of my videos and you hit the 2-hour mark, good on you. But yeah, DBJ, notes will be down below. Contributing writer to Critical Hit Publishing. My thing is the cinematic environments. You can find them on Drive Through RPG. We have a Discord channel. And shit, there's a bunch of other stuff. You guys have a good one in the chat. You guys have a good day. Thank you for joining in. Whatever time zone you're in, thanks a lot. And now, sir, Roleplay, please take it away.
My name is Nelson. I am the sole psychopath behind Infinite Roleplay and 1/4 of A Point of Inspiration. I draw, I write stories, I design quests. I actually design role-playing game systems. I've got one out published currently, Saturday Morning Tabletop, which is based off of D&D mixed with all the tropes you could find in anything from 90s and 80s and some 70s cartoons and anime, as well as designed a system that is not yet out from A Point of Inspiration called Knights of the Lamb, where you play a teddy bear or a plushy knight that awakens when the people go to sleep to protect their children from the things that go bump in the night.
That's weird.
And I make DBJ overstream.
Yeah. We're all part of the larger larger scope. Thanks, RP. Yeah, and Vince, absolutely. Guys, thanks for just joining in. As always, for me, it's always just about like just being positive, using that energy to add people in, to create more drama, more stories. So absolutely, thanks, guys. Sorry, because the chat's probably going to end up cutting off once I stop the live stream. But we will be here tomorrow for Tips and Tricks Tuesday, whatever that tip or trick is, which for some reason I pick at the last minute. But Tips and Tricks Tuesdays, World Building Wednesday, Third Pillar Thursdays, and Future Fridays. So thanks you, and stream is over.